Everybody. I hope that you're doing well. This video serves as a general tutorial to get you acclimated to using our animation software, Toon Harmony. We also have storyboarding software that you'll learn how to use at a later time, but I figured I'd make this video first. Now, if you're watching this video and you have experience, the later portions of this video, denoted by 10-minute increments, will serve as a nice refresher course for you. For you, I advise skipping through the first section, which is controls, and going to the next section. I'm going to divide this video into three 10-minute sections. One's going to be controls, another one's going to be windows, and the third is going to be workflow and drawing tips. What I put here is generally something to get you acclimated, or if you have a couple questions, it may serve as a way to answer those questions on a day that we are not holding class, or after class, or before class, or something like that. So feel free to refer to this video as needed. Okay, so generally speaking, whenever you're working on Toon Boom Harmony, you're going to start with a window that shows up similarly to this. You can create a place to save your artwork, just as I have right here, and you can also select the location. Now, where I'm going to save my artwork is in a place called Drawing Demo that I have created. You always want to go to the place that you want to save. Outside of what we do on the first day of class, I'd recommend making a folder inside of your documents. Your animation project will run better. Now, I'm going to create one called Drawing Demo. The camera size is HDTV 1080p, 24 frames per second. You can see that down here, 1920 pixels by 1080 pixels by 24. This is generally accepted to be standard definition nowadays, even though it's set as HDTV. We're going to hit Create Scene, and a window is going to pop up, just like this. Now, inside of this window, you have a few different controls that you can use to navigate this surface. And I want to show you in this first section what these controls are. So I'm going to, just to give you a little bit of a guide, I'm going to draw a nice happy face. There we go. Okay, so first things first, I'm referring to a list of common hotkeys that I have on the blog. This is useful for everybody. I'm just going to go straight down the list. 1 and 2 will zoom in and out your window that you're using. Okay, this border that you see that pops up here is kind of the outside bleed edge for your artwork. Whenever we export out your artwork, anything that's outside of this border is not going to show up. I can actually demonstrate that by going down here and clicking this frame button, and it'll actually show you a preview of what your artwork will look like. In addition to that, if you hold the spacebar and click, you can pan around your window, so you can move to any side. Also, this is good for if you just want to write notes for yourself or reminders on a single frame of animation while you're drawing. In addition to that, if you hold Option and Command, let's say you sketch out something really nice and you want to trace it, holding Option and Command will bring up this red outline. This red outline is an animation table. It lets you turn your artwork just like this, so you can get very close with the zoom keys and do some inking if you need to. It's very useful. It's a good tool to have for anything that you're trying to do. All right. After you've turned your work, sometimes you'll want to go back to normal. So hitting Shift plus M will actually reset your viewpoint back to normal. So it makes it easier for you to work. So you can use Command and Option to turn, and Shift and M to go back there. Now, F5 creates holds and extends drawing frames. I'll cover this more when I get into workflow, but let's say you create two drawings. You create a character that's smiling, and later on down the line, you want to make another drawing of a character that is sad. Hitting F5 will allow you to increase the amount of time that whichever drawing of those that you pick lasts on screen. So my happy face lasts for 1 frame, and my sad face lasts for about, I don't know, maybe 30. If I hit the play button, you can actually see that the smiley face will just flick on screen for a very short time, not long at all. There you go. Okay, so maybe you want to step through this and kind of modify things as you go. If you do this, you can use the comma and period keys to actually step through each individual frame of animation in your timeline. This makes it so whenever you're drawing a bunch of artwork, you can step through one by one and see exactly what artwork you are looking at. So if you lose something, you can step through and find it. Now, there is a difference between this. I'm actually going to move um, around just a little bit. This basically says the exact same thing as this. Um, this F and G will allow you to move between key drawings. And I want to emphasize it when it says key drawings or main drawings in your artwork. So anytime you create a drawing and those drawings are represented by different blocks in here, you can skip between each drawing you've created with the F and G key. So if I hit G, it'll actually skip through to each drawing that I have made. Now, this might not necessarily seem like it's doing much right now here, but let me go ahead and create another drawing on this little section. Grab this tool, click here. Okay. Going down here, hitting F and G now, it skips this huge area, which is much more useful sometimes than hitting the period and comma keys. This way you can skip very quickly throughout your entire artwork and go just to the drawings that you're using. Toon Boom is built in such a way that any keys you need will be kind of in the middle of the keyboard when it comes to navigating through your artwork. So I hope that helps a little bit. Now, last but not least, you have a very important uh, um, uh, tool which allows you to emulate the process of adding drawings to your artwork. Now, to do this, I'm going to actually delete these frames, and I'm going to create a simple character right here, and I'm going to add an extra drawing to this, and I'll explain the tools that I'm using in a second. This character's excited. There we go. So I have this drawing of a character jumping in the air. I use F and G to cycle through it. But I might need to add a drawing to make this a little bit more smooth and add a little bit more fluidity to it. What I can use is this hotkey right here, Option Shift R, to create an empty drawing. This is the exact same tool as this button right here. Create empty drawing. It shows up next to this little window. It shows up to the right of your frame counter, and it always looks like this, a plus with a little sheet of paper with an X through it. So what this allows you to do is through your artwork, right now I only have 2 drawings here. I can pick a spot on my timeline, click it, and using the hotkey Option Shift R or clicking that button, I can create a new blank drawing between the two, which would allow me, if I'm using any additional tools, to make a new drawing. Oops, there we go. To make the artwork a little bit more fluid and make it so the transition between my drawings is a little bit clearer. So now this character looks like they're crouching and jumping. Sometimes I might want to change the length of the drawings that I'm using down here. To do so, I would need to hit the plus and minus keys on my keyboard, and I can increase and decrease the length of time each drawing lasts on screen. Whatever you see down here that's gray and these little divisions represents how long each drawing that you've created actually lasts. Just like that. These are your general tools. And honestly, these are the ones that are going to make life easiest for you as you're working. So I suggest practice up with these. And if you feel a little rusty, refer back to this video in the first section to use that. Okay, so now that we've covered that, let's cover some of the windows that you have to work with. And I'll start with the window that I'm using right here. This window is our timeline. Every single window that you use in Toon Boom Harmony is referenced with a little tab in the top right hand corner. This one is my timeline here. This one is color. This one is tool properties. Anytime you see another name next to it in a slightly smaller tab, that's another tab you can click to switch between them. They occupy the same space. Each of these tabs can be picked up. I'm clicking one time and I'm dragging and moved around or pulled out so you can see it much larger. A lot of times there's some extra tools that are hiding that you can kind of look at, but there's also little scroll wheels and things that you can look at as well in these tool sections. Now, if you're ever using this and things look a little strange to you, a good rule of thumb is to go up to Windows and restore default workspace. What this is going to do is reset the way Toon Boom Harmony looks like to kind of factory settings. It puts everything in its default area, and in my opinion, the most common areas for you to find certain items for you to use, which can be very useful. Now, back to the timeline. The timeline down here is where you're going to be making your artwork. This is also where your layers appear. Each layer is represented by a little symbol and the name of the layer itself. Whenever you open Toon Boom, it creates a default layer for you called drawing. Now, if you want to make more layers for yourself, you can do so by going to this little plus tab here. This plus means create new layer. This minus means delete layers. Now there are some additional tools that you have here that are useful for you. This add drawing layer is just a shortcut, so you don't always have to click this button and go here to create drawing layer. You can just hit that button and it'll create a drawing layer for you by default, just like you see here. This last one is an add peg button. This one will be very useful for you very soon. I will make another video on what pegs are and how to use them in the future. So we want to create some drawing layers just so you have a couple things to use. I'm going to do it the long way first, add drawing, and you're going to see this window that pops up. Now when you see this window that pops up, it's going to ask you for a name for your new layer. You can name your layers before you create them just like normal. So I'm going to create a sketch layer. I'm just going to call it sketch, and you're going to have some options for this layer. Do you want it to be line art? Do you want it to be color art? Do you want to be able to make lines with it? Do you want to be able to create color art in it? These options are on every layer that you select, but you are also able to select the type of layer you have. Vector art refers to something similar to Adobe Illustrator. The lines you create, no matter how much you zoom in and out to them, will always retain shape and will never lose quality. Bitmap refers to pixels. So if you're working in Photoshop or you're working with a specific texture you want to use, that's what this section is for. For what we're doing in the beginning of class, it's always a good idea to just work with vector artwork. It's going to make your life a little bit easier. We can integrate Photoshop layers and things like that in later. So I'm going to hit sketch and I'm going to hit add. I'm also going to make another layer just because I have a certain way that I like to work. I'm going to create a corrections layer. I'm going to hit add, and then I'm going to make a line art layer. And I'm going to hit add and close. When I hit add and close, it'll close this window out. So if I look down, now I have 3 layers that I've created in order: sketch, corrections, and line art. All of these have the same settings on them, and I'll demonstrate what these settings are real quick. I'm going to grab this blue color in this color tab, and I'm just going to make a face. There we go. Boop. All right, so let's just say I have a face that I've made here. Now, what the sketch layer lets me do is draw in here. And I just want to go ahead and mention this. I know I'm referring to these layers by name, but all these layers work the exact same. this sketch layer has a drawing that I've created in it. I can click and hold this drawing to move it wherever I want. There's a little yellow highlight that has popped up that allows me to drop it in wherever I need. Now, the size of your rectangle when your drawing is created dictates how long it lasts on screen. So if I only have a drawing that lasts for a single frame, it's going to be very tiny and it's going to flicker. Using that F5 key that I mentioned before, I can click anywhere in my timeline at the bottom and I can increase how long that drawing shows up, which can be very useful. Same thing for these other ones as well. Whenever I'm working on uh, some type of artwork, sometimes these other layers can be used to either not just draw over your artwork, but also kind of map it out in different ways. And what I like to do with this sometimes, if I have some type of artwork that I'd like to improve, I can use the next layer to draw improvements on top of the artwork. Maybe change the way a mouth looks or something like that. Okay, so the timeline, like I said before, is very useful. You can use it to play your artwork. You can also set start and stop sections for your artwork as well. The start and stop, if I set this to start 1 and stop 5, is represented by these little tiny triangles that show up. These triangles will only play your animation in that area. This is your looping button, and this is an export preview button, render and play. You don't necessarily have to render out your artwork to preview it, but if you want a higher quality preview, you can go there. I know I'm going to get this question 100 times, so I'll go ahead and answer it at this stage. Your camera view shows a low quality version of your artwork. These jagged lines are not going to show up in the final version of your artwork. This is just so you can see it a little bit easier. Now, if anybody has any questions on how to improve your artwork, there is a little tool inside of your preferences window where you can increase what's called the anti-aliasing. If you go to OpenGL and full scene anti-aliasing, you click enable and set this number of samples to like 1 or 2. It's going to smooth out all those preview drawings. You're going to have to reopen Toon Boom after you use it if that really bothers you that much, but honestly for me it's fine. Now going back to this lets you just play your artwork. You can also use this slider to rewind, play forward, and change the speed at which we see the artwork. So this kind of lets you flip through your artwork. It's a flip slider. This button here, like I said before, is the most important button you use, create empty drawing. It's going to let you make more artwork. Now, I know I spent most of my time on the timeline in this 10 minutes, but I just want to emphasize the fact that a lot of the tools that you use is very useful in here. One of the other tools that's very useful that you have is a color card, which can be found in there as well. This is what you're going to want to add to your artwork to make the white background. Otherwise, you don't really have a background, and anything that shows up on that gray is actually going to be kicked out as invisible. So your color card that you create, you can pick up and move around wherever you want. I'm just clicking on it and moving it up and down here just to demonstrate that you can kind of change the order of these. The color card's order doesn't matter as much as the other ones, but generally stacks work the same way that they work in Photoshop. Whatever's on top is the one that's going to show up on top in your artwork. Whatever's on bottom is the one that's going to show up in the bottom. If you ever have a situation like this where you create a color card and something's inside of it like this, you'll see a little arrow that you can click to open and close it. You can grab your drawing and pull it out as such here. Now, you have a couple other tools that you can use. Your tool properties over here allow you to change your brush size and your brush settings. You can click a brush size. I like to work in 10 here. If you click this triangle, you can also increase and decrease the smoothing, which will change how your artwork shows up, as well as a minimum size. Color is right here. Now, there are more windows to use, but the ones that you're probably going to use the most are your timeline, your brush settings, and your color, at least in the beginning. Now, in addition to this, I know that I'm kind of getting to the next section of this, workflow and drawing tips. I'll talk more about what these windows do and in this section just to kind of help you with what you're doing. Now, whenever you're making artwork in any type of digital drawing program, I think one of the things that scares people the most is this idea that, oh no, I have all these tools and I'm not really that good with them, so I don't want to use them. I just want to use, something that's easier for me, like a Photoshop or something like that. What usually helps with using something like Toon Boom is the understanding that everything that's here is designed to make you make high quality artwork very fast. These tools did not exist a long time ago, and so they're generated and such to help you. What I like to do whenever I'm working on my artwork, I like to use my color tab and my tool properties in tandem. I'm going to open up my tool properties and hit this triangle button over here. Generally speaking, I like to work with a minimum size that's 75% or more. Minimum size refers to what the small sections of your brushstroke look like when you're drawing lightly. This keeps your line art more uniform and makes it easier for you to have a line that is consistent. A lot of general kind of starting line art that I see from students is very scratchy like this. If you want to improve your craftsmanship, I suggest working with a slightly thicker line when you're working. Now, smoothing on the other hand, I don't like to use a lot of smoothing because I like my lines to be more organic. But if you feel like your line art is a little rough, I say turn up your smoothing maybe 30% or so. That way, if your line's a little wiggly, it'll try to correct it for you, as you can see there. With your color tab, colors can always be created by hitting this little plus button down here. It'll bring up a new color, reference with the word new, and it'll also bring a copy of whatever color you just used. So if you want to make variations on a color, this is a way to make a lot of variations. Double clicking that color brings up this window. It allows you to create a new name for that color and pick it. Instead of having 100,000 colors for you available in that window, it just lets you make your own because you're a professional. In this case, you might want to have more control over that. Personally, I like to use this to make a couple different like sketching colors off the top of my head, or if I wanted to make like a correction color or something, I can do that. So I'll just make a sketching color, and I can actually name it exactly what I want. And I can also, under this, when I finish, just hit the X key, and there you go. A color is made, and it's separate, and it's going to be just in my artwork where I want it to be. So if I want to draw on here with my specific color, it'll show up. Now, there are a couple tools that I like to use workflow-wise. I like to create a sketch on a single layer first. So on that next layer, I can go in with another color, my corrections or whatever I'm using, and I can actually go in and very quickly draw alternates to whatever I'm making. So this way, if I'm like working on something and I'm not sure if the artwork looks exactly where I want it to look like, I can test something very quickly. The parts that I really like, I keep as such, and I only change the parts that I feel like might need to be adjusted slightly for one reason or another. So like maybe this ear might need a little bit more work to it. There we go. Improve the chin. Goatee. There we go. The idea, whenever you're working in animation, is to sketch first. This is the thing that hangs up people the most. They feel like they need to be perfect. They feel like they need to erase. They don't know when to be rough and they don't know when to be clean, to the point where they're always rough and they never get to that cleaning phase. What I want to advise to you is to have a separate layer just for correction, so you can just go down and put some very quick notes on top of your artwork. So as you're animating, once you finally get to your line art, you can look at both of those and make lines that are really nice and clean and succinct for you. Kind of like this. I'm going to draw nice little circle here for myself. I'm going to draw a nice little circle here for myself. I'm also going to draw a couple lines for my artwork. Animation can take a lot of time to do, and you're always trying to mitigate speed versus quality. So you want to find a nice balance between each. This is not illustration in the sense that you can add a lot of detail, and all the detail you add is important. You're going to have to draw whatever you draw multiple times, so it's important to find something that matters and find something that looks good not just to you but also the artwork that you're trying to make. The approach that I'm using for this single drawing is usually what I use for all of my artwork. My recommendation for you is that if you feel uncomfortable drawing in this program, take some time and practice drawing a single drawing first. That way, you can get better at making one piece of art that looks good. And work simple first. We have a lot of ways that we achieve complexity in animation through analysis of anatomy, through figure drawing, through perspective, a lot of different ways. If you feel like as an artist you want to improve your artwork, use a simpler method of doing artwork for you in the beginning so you can learn what is good, what's not good, what works, and what doesn't work faster. That way, when you get ready to do your next project, you can make something a little bit more detailed that way. Don't start out trying to make the most detailed fight scene, the most amazing character-based sequence, the most detailed environments. Those things come with time, and I want to make sure that you take the time to get good at those things, but get good at those things in the right order. A lot of this class seems a little bit backwards from other classes that you might have taken before. But whenever you take the time to practice, you can make some pretty compelling things very quickly. This little button right here lets you preview what the final version of something looks like. I think that looks pretty good. Okay, so I have about, I'd say, 3 more minutes in this tutorial. So I want to go ahead and make mention to a couple things. Whenever you're saving out your artwork, you're going to want to go to File and Save. Also, whenever you export your artwork, you want to go File, Export, Movie. Anytime you have a movie that you create that you like, you can create whatever you'd want to make. Let's just call this drawing demo sample.mov. You can browse for a place, and then you want to select the frames that you want to export. After you hit that, same as scene resolution, you'll have some movie options in here. Go to settings and make sure you hit millions of colors plus. That's going to be very useful for you. These are under the animation compression types. We'll talk about some more types a little bit later, but if you ever work on something and you want to save it and you want to take it home in a compressed movie form, you can click this button and you can hit OK. And you can hit OK here, and it's going to export out your movie. Now, this is not going to be a great movie because I only have a couple drawings on this first frame and just some sporadic drawings here. But I don't mind demonstrating just how to export something so you're able to use it. Once you make an export and you have it, your artwork will be wherever you saved it, able for you to use. Here's mine, drawing demo sample. If I double click this, it'll convert my artwork, and there it is. There's my movie, able to be used. I can play it back and forth. Everything is fine. Now, here's some advice. I'm going to say this 100 times. I've said it 100 times in class. You're going to hear it 100 times because people always forget. Once you make a video, you're going to need to convert it from an animation file into a regular video file. The way that you do this is just by going to File and Save and resaving that video one time. Take out the converted section for it and hit save on that video. Once you do that, and I hit replace, that video is good to go. You're able to make it, you're able to do whatever you want with it. And this makes it so your artwork is a lot clearer. And if I close this video, I can also preview it now. Hit the space bar, and there it is. My video shows up, no problem. All right, so I hope that this kind of general walkthrough of what Toon Boom is and how it's used and how it works has been useful for you. If you have any additional questions, please let me know. There's 100,000 things that you can do with this program to make it very nice, very easy to use, make everything you make very crisp and clean for you. If you have any additional questions, please let me know. In the meantime, hope you have a nice day.